But one thing you've spoken about today a couple of times, and this is something that I think about often because there's so many, you can read so many things that tell you this is how to boost it, which coming to the immune system. There's 10, everyone has, if you go online, there's 10 million ways that people say to like, that can boost your immune system. And,
Yeah.
you know, all these supplements and all these kinds of things. So, and I don't know. I genuinely don't know what to believe or not to believe. So speaking to someone who knows exactly what's going on, how do we start to build our immune system and how do we maintain it? What are the most important factors that we have to think about when looking at our immune system?
Great question. Very timely as well, given the panic that we're in. I do usually run monthly talks with a dear friend and a functional nutritionist. Her name is Farah Helou. She's actually based in Abu Dhabi. And we do those talks, they're free. And our next topic is going to be about building immune resiliency in children, because a lot of parents are now worried about sending their kids back with, you know, the COVID scare. So I'll share that with you when that's available. You can share it with your team, because whatever we do for kids is the same we do for adults. It's just the dosing varies. But when it comes to immunity, the important thing is we're not trying to boost it. We're trying to regulate it, because what you want is a regulated immune system, not an immune system that's underactive or overactive, because an overactive immune system is going to overreact when an infection happens, and that's what actually leads to a lot of the negative symptomology of COVID, where we heard about the cytokine storm, right? Where the body overreacts and then starts to attack the tissue, and then we have these problems. And then we don't want it to be underactive, where it's completely oblivious to the fact that there's an infection going on. So people, for example, who tell me, oh, I haven't gotten sick in 10 years, that's not a good thing, right? That means that your immune system is probably sleeping, and we need to wake it up a little bit.
Oh,
Right?
that's interesting.
So
Okay.
yeah. So because people you kind of wear it as a badge of honor. I've never gotten sick, and then I measure them, and one of the important markers of immunity, like your innate immune system, the surveillance, which is the secretory IgA, is like really low. I'm like, well, you know, your surveillance is down. It's not working. You know, so how are the troops going to come if there's an infection, right? The surveillance will call on the troops, which is the second arm of the immune system. So with the immune system, you need to make sure that it's regulated. And the way you make sure it's regulated is a lot of the things we talked about today. One is you need to have an anti-inflammatory diet. So no sugar, and no processed foods, no fried foods. You want to eat as much as possible a whole food diet. If you pick up something and there's more than 3 things in the label, then that's not a whole food, that's processed. Avoid it. You want to eat something that's grown out of the ground, and not something that's been man-made, right? So stick to whole foods, and lots of dark green leafy vegetables that has a lot of the vitamins and minerals that the body needs, that the immune system needs. Now, the immune system honestly requires all forms of vitamins and minerals, right? And fatty acids and so on. So we can't say that specifically you need to take this. I think everybody should be on a good multivitamin, given the inflammatory lifestyle or environment that we live in. But really, supplement is a supplement, right? It's something you add on top. So it's not the things that I actually go to. The things that I always go to is clean up your diet, as I mentioned, avoid sugar, anti-inflammatory processed foods, dairy, gluten in certain types of people. But that's the key message. You want to eat a whole foods diet, and then you want to optimize your sleep. If you don't sleep, you don't regenerate. Your immune system doesn't get to rebuild. So sleep is really critical. And you want restorative sleep, not just, oh, I slept 10 hours, but I still feel tired. Well, that means you didn't get restorative sleep. So look at sleep hygiene. It's so important. You want to be able to be off screens at least an hour before going to bed. You want to be asleep before 11 p.m. And if you need to work, because I know people are now digital, and if you need to work, excuse me, then buy blue light blockers and work away. At least they block the blue light and promote the release of melatonin, so that when you're done, you're ready to go to sleep. Meditate before you go to bed. Recenter yourself so that you're more in that parasympathetic state. And I also work on your stress. If you're constantly wired and living in a state of fear and anxiety, that's going to dampen your immune system. As I mentioned earlier, high levels of cortisol correlate with worsening um, COVID-19 symptoms. So you definitely don't want to have that stress. So I encourage, definitely don't watch TV early in the morning, the news in particular, and don't watch it at night. Don't watch anything in the evening that's going to raise your cortisol, like horror movies or, heart-wrenching documentaries. You want to keep things light in order to put your body in a state of parasympathetic rest, digest, and restoration state. So really looking after your emotional well-being is so critical in this time.
Mm.
And spending time in nature wherever you can. If you're able to go out in nature every day 30 minutes, that's going to have a profound impact on your heart rate variability. It really brings you back into that balance between the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. So just 30 minutes in nature does wonders for your body. And then the most critical in terms of vitamins is vitamin D. That's really essential for your immune system. Most people are either deficient or insufficient. And I would encourage everybody to test their vitamin D and take vitamin D. It's so easy to test, and you really want to have optimal vitamin D levels. And to be honest, I have not seen all the patients I've seen, have not had a single patient who has optimal vitamin D. Most people are on vitamin D supplementation. I think if you're going to supplement with anything, it should be vitamin D.
Okay. That's on the vitamin D point, which I think is hilarious. That here growing up, I don't know how many times I've spoken to friends and they've had a vitamin D deficiency when we live in a place that is like sun 24 every year, all day, and yet people are still deficient. But it's interesting also that you said that you might not be at the optimum level that you should be. So I think that's also an interesting point. But as a person, all the things that you mentioned are fantastic, and how to boost your immune system, and as you said, sorry, to regulate it and to make sure it's performing in the best way. But let's say I'm a person now, Khaled, sitting here right now. How would I be able, without, I guess, going for some type of, I guess, medical test, how would I know where I'm at? What would give me a good indication of how is my immune system?
It's a good question. I think that so with the immune system, it's quite really hard to measure, because the only way we know how to measure an immune system is by measuring the white blood cells. But white blood cells is just number of army soldiers you have in your army, which is not, it's such a rudimentary way to measure it, because the immune system is so much more complex. So we measure it indirectly. I think that if you have any of those signs of inflammation, you know that your immune system is not functioning well, i.e., if you have brain fog, if you have headaches, if you have experiences of nausea, if you have um, uh, disrupted sleep or inability to sleep, right? If you feel anxiety or a feeling of heart racing, if you feel really cold, or you are profusely sweat, or if you have any gut symptoms, because as I mentioned, the gut is the gateway to the immune system. So if you have constant like sinus issues, inflammation, if you have bleeding gums, is always a sign of inflammation going on. You need to fix that. But if you have constipation, if you have diarrhea, if you have bloating, that is all a sign that there's a dysregulation in your immune system. So if you have any of those signs, then you need to work on improving your overall well-being.
Okay.
And with the immune system, it's the gut. You need to look at the gut, and you need to look at your adrenals. If your adrenals are not balanced, and if your gut is not in good shape, then your immune system is always open for dysregulation.
Okay. So looking out for, those smaller symptoms, or the things that seem to be occurring with us more consistently, would give us a good indication of where we're at based on,
Yeah,
those factors that you mentioned. Okay.
yeah.
That's really interesting. I got to start to pay a bit more attention, especially the sleep one.
But you can measure your vitamin D, because I think you can order it now, and it's just a prick test. It's a finger prick test, and you can get
Okay.
your vitamin D measured, and then as soon as you get the result, just start supplementing.
Oh, okay. I had no idea that you could do that. It was something that simple. I think it might
Yeah,
be a good idea to get
yeah,
it checked out,
yeah.
just in case.